Welcome. This is the introduction webinar to breathing for singing. I'm going to wait a few minutes just to let folks show up and then we'll dive right in. This is being recorded for the purposes of being able to release and review later on, but if it's just me, I will kind of go through this quickly, talk to you about some best practices for the course, and then this can be the short version of the kind of introduction. There were quite a few, there's a good crowd for the AM version of the webinar, and there were some really great questions, and I certainly did my best to answer well. I think they were pretty good answers. Feel free to check that one out as well. Like I said, I'll wait another minute or two for folks to come online, and then we'll get started. All right, I'm going to get started here. I'm going to take this as an indication that I did not do my best job in scheduling these. So I am going to make sure that for webinar number 2, I'm going to ask for some information about when might be the best times for those of you who wish to attend and see if I can reconcile the differences. With the number of people that came on board with the Breathing for Singing course in this enrollment period, I'm probably not going to be able to suit every time zone, but the AM version was reasonably well attended. This one's quite a bit lighter. Well, there's no one here except for me. But that's fine. I'm going to go through the introduction here. This may actually allow me to expound a little bit more on using the website and some best practices, which is great. And before we do webinar number 2, I will ask the people from this enrollment period if there's a better time so that we can get as many people into these as possible and I can answer as many questions. Speaking of that, I want to, before we even get into this, just remind you, you became members of the RVC. You get your first year for free with the enrollment period, and actually in general too. So feel free to ask questions. You can also embed audio and video. It's there to be used, and right now there are quite a few people in that community, but not a lot of people posting and using it. And so you basically have my undivided attention, so long as you can just embed stuff in there and I can listen and hopefully help out a lot. There is a specific topic for the Breathing for Singing course. So if it is related to breathing for singing, specifically the course, I would suggest you tag it appropriately with that topic. But there's a load of other topics, and if there's a topic that you want to talk about that you don't see, tell me and I'll add it so that we can talk about the things that you want to talk about and get you the help that you need from me as best as I can possibly help you. Obviously, you can always send an email, but I am trying to encourage people to use the RVC as much as possible so that we build a kind of wealth of knowledge. And I'm also trying to get Kajabi to do a different organizational system for the community, because it's just not, it works way better than the old community that I had with High Note Bootcamp. but the information is just not as nicely organized as even a modest content management system would do it. So I'm trying to encourage them to include some other ways to organize it, a different theme. There's all kinds of different themes you can do with the website stuff. I want to get a different theme over there, get it organized a little bit better. It'll make everything work even better still. That being said, in terms of being able to post and embed audio and video, it's way better than what we had before. But I digress. This is about the intake for breathing for singing. And what I want to do in this webinar is basically introduce you to the website if you're unfamiliar with it, show you some best practices for it so that you can navigate the content easily and at your, as your needs change over the usage of the course. I want you to be able to get to the information that you need. And then we'll talk about a few other things as well. But first, let's discuss the website. So first of all, I've got to change screens, don't I? So let's do that. You don't need to see all this while I'm doing that. The first thing that you see when you log in to your account is this, My Classes. Now, and I should probably change this to My Library because it's actually the My Library link that you want to click. That brings you here. This is always, you can always open this and click on My Library to come back here. Specifically, there was someone in the course who was having problems navigating back to the videos in question. You can always come back to your library, and then from there, scroll down, and there's your Breathing for Singing course. You click on it, and it will bring you to the sort of front page, if you will, of the Breathing for Singing course. Now, don't be tempted to click Resume Course necessarily, especially if you're wanting to get to a specific video. Instead, scroll down, and you can scroll through all of the various videos, lectures, and practice videos. I've labeled them as clearly as I could. And get to the video that you want. You'll notice all these blue ticks. They indicate that they are completed. So I've gone through and marked all of these as completed. There is no problem going back to whatever you want and just viewing that video. Now, you might not hear that audio because it's coming out of a different source, but I can assure you it's playing. You can see me moving and all that kind of stuff. The point here is that the videos are specifically broken up into lecture and practice. And it's my hope that the lecture videos will show you the skill required that you're practicing, what you're trying to acquire in the practice video that it's attached to. And you don't have to necessarily go over the lecture videos over and over again, but the practice videos are practices. They are meant to be practiced. Apogeo is a practice. It's a breath management system, and there's a practice to it. I've probably said the word practice enough times at this point. You get my drift here. Those videos are there to help you turn this breath management system into your breathing habit. And that's where you're going to stand to get the most benefits from it when it's the habit as opposed to something that you have to focus on while you're singing. Now, one of the benefits of having these very straightforward kind of goal-oriented practices is that if you are, say, like, you've practiced for a while and it becomes your habit and you're no longer consciously thinking about it, but you're singing one day or performing and you start to notice that things aren't quite right, then you can go back to kind of assessing in real time, where are you? What's your expansion? What's your engagement? Where are you in your practice? And then that way you can troubleshoot on the fly and get back to where you're singing really, really effectively. There's another way to navigate through the website. And it's kind of hard to see, but you'll notice that up here you have this string of different stuff. And you can click anywhere in the string to get to various parts of the course. So you can then go, and then you can get back to your exercises stage 1. Or if you're in stage 2, you can go there and get all of those. Or if you just want to go back all the way to home base, then you can click the first one and it brings you all the way back here, where you can then go through whatever it is you want to go through. I am actively adding to these courses these days. One of the benefits, the discount that this was all about was the new website sale, and that's because I've changed platforms as of March. This website is now on a system called Kajabi. Before, I was doing a variety of different things with WordPress and different hosting, and it was all kind of scattered. Now it's all in one place. One of the benefits is that adding to the coursework, adding to the website is extremely much easier than it was in the past. And I would suggest that you check back from time to time. I don't think that you'll get notified as I add new content to the courses, but if you look at the bonus material content for this course, I guess you didn't have access to it for very long. This is all getting filled out as we go, and these are the answers to the various questions that came in on the survey. So I'll be filling this out over the course of the coming weeks. And additionally, there's at least one new coordination exercise that I wish to add to the course, and I'll be adding that in the next couple of weeks. I've been on a bit of a hiatus from doing like some warm-up videos and adding content because the piano was really out of tune. It really, really needed to be tuned, and I just couldn't in good conscience record any kind of warm-ups or practices with it in the state that it was in. Checking back here, let's take a look at our syllabus again, as much for me as anyone else. I think we've now gone over course navigation, and I've kind of touched on best practices to a certain extent, but let's take a little bit more time and talk about it. The Apogeo Breath Management System is, and I've mentioned this many times, I'll mention it again, transformed my singing, transformed my ability to use my voice, upper register response, intonation, like you name it. There was no aspect of my singing performance that wasn't affected when I made the transition to Apogeo Breath Management. I didn't, looking back on it now, and I mentioned this in the AM session, I thought I had breathing technique, but I didn't. It was mostly the kind of stuff that one always hears, like breathe from the diaphragm, you need to support, stick your belly out and then pull it back in, that's your support, like that's how it works. And for the amount of training and practice and time and teaching that I was doing, it just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that my capability to perform and deliver just felt so inconsistent as compared to others that I was hearing. And I started to do a lot of research outside of my lessons and outside of my studies on my own, trying to understand what was going on, trying to look at breathing technique through a different lens, through just somebody else instead of all of the information that I had previously received. And that's when I came upon Richard Miller's works, when I got the Training Tenor Voices book, and when I finally got to the chapter on breathing for singing, it just didn't make any sense. It is really what it was. It wasn't that it blew me away. My first impression was that it didn't compute. Like I read it over and over and over again, and I couldn't make sense of it because it conflicted so much with everything that I had been taught thus far. I probably ought to have mentioned that earlier on in this discussion too, which is that there is quite likely going to be some descriptions of things in the course that conflict with information that you have previously received. I would encourage you to write an email to me or ask a question in the RVC. Equally, I would also encourage you to seek out other information. There's plenty of information online. You could check Richard Miller's books would be a great place to start. You can also check the new Oxford Dictionary of Singing, I believe just came out last year. It's a massive, massive book, highly reputable source of information. I have other thoughts about that, but still worth checking out. Lots of information out there, and I'm happy to discuss it with you in the RVC. Getting back to point here, it just didn't compute. It just didn't make sense to me. And what I did was go and find a teacher in the San Francisco, California area who had gone to Northwestern, and that was Megan Dibble. She's now the professor of vocal pedagogy at the San Francisco Conservatory. I wasn't studying with her at the conservatory. I wish I would have mentioned that in the earlier session. I was not studying with her at the conservatory. She was not the professor at the conservatory when I was studying with her. But she is now. And she was the instructor that helped me make the transition from what I had been doing to Apagio breath management. And the reason why I did this was because Richard Miller taught at Northwestern for at least a good part of his career, and I believe he went to Oberlin later on. At any rate, much of what you're going to find in the course may conflict with what you've previously been taught. Just give it some consideration. Look at the examples, try the exercises, send a question to me via the RVC, and I'll happily talk with you about it, because it was such a transformation for me. And when I first came into the information for it, it just took me a lot to really wrap my head around it. Best practices. Come at it with an open mind. Know that it's a practice, and you're quite likely to make some strides forward, and then you may need to revisit some of those. That's why we went through the whole course navigation thing to start with. How you do these exercises is as important as doing them in the first place. You have to really focus and observe yourself in the practice of doing the exercises. So using your hands for biofeedback, using a mirror or like a smartphone or tablet with the camera flipped around so you can watch yourself in real time. You have to come at these with intent, because when you're doing Apagio breath management and you're doing it properly, it just doesn't look like very much. And it's quite likely that even in the examples that I've done in the course, that it's hard to actually observe the physical aspects of what I'm doing. So come at them as a practice. Try to come at them with the ability to self-evaluate in real time. Know that you're likely to go forward and then backpedal a little bit, especially those who have belly breathed, like where you're sticking your stomach out and pulling it in. You are quite likely going to try to use far more muscle engagement than is actually necessary when you have adequate expansion in conjunction with the engagement of the core body muscles. I say that because that's what happened to me. So I hope it doesn't happen to you. I've tried to build this course so that you can circumvent a lot of the pitfalls that I fell into. But there was a period where I was exerting so much force abdominally that it was kind of painful. This is not the practice. That is not how this works. So if you find yourself in that position, take a step back, review the lecture videos, review the other videos, start your practices again and work your way through it step by step. That is ultimately what I did, was step all the way back from it, go back to square one, focusing on expansion. laterally through the rib cage, and then looking to apply only as much force as I needed for good phonation. And you can check this with short vowel syllables. These are oftentimes found on beginner, like on my channel on YouTube, you'll find them in the beginner playlists. You've got to put your ego aside on those. Think of them as fundamental practices if you want. We're rebuilding a foundation here, and so coming back to those kinds of exercises may be necessary. And what you're listening for are short, full-sounding vowel sounds. We, 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 we. We. If you hear a lot of air on the front end, you're not really getting good vocal fold adduction at the start. You're leaking a lot of air. Alternately, if you're getting like glottal attacks, that is way too much tension up here, and you're using the epiglottis to cap the airflow, simulating a really crisp attack. It's not really a crisp attack. You can use a glottal attack or a glottal stroke from time to time, but as a general rule, we want to try to avoid those. It's not a clean entrance to the phrase. It has a tendency to kind of shock load the vocal folds because they get hit with a heavy column of air all at once. It's bad for intonation. It's bad for your overall vocal fatigue levels. We want to be able to come at these with a clean articulation. So if I did a solid vowel, we'd get as opposed to or we have the glottal attack. One is too little adduction, too much flow of air. One is not enough flow of air and too much vocal fold engagement. You get that sound. We're looking for the middle ground. And that middle ground will show you just how well you are maintaining your engagement over the duration of the exercises. It's a good way to test how effective your Appoggio practice is becoming. So I actually talked a lot more here about some of these practices and how to approach the course because it's just me, and I get to talk about the things that I think will help you the most in getting started with this practice. I would encourage you to ask questions via the RVC. That is a great way to build our body of knowledge together. I am here to help you. That is part of why I've built this website the way that I did, is to encourage interaction and make it easier for you to get faster responses from me, as opposed to, I mean, like the comments on YouTube are great and I try to answer all of them and I do the questions from comments things, but posts in the RVC get answered very quickly and much more fully than what you're generally going to see in the comments on YouTube, just because I have a more of a platform to work within. It's easier, it's faster, all those kinds of things. I don't have to find them or anything like that. So use the RVC. It's there for you to use. I hope you found this helpful. I'm sorry if I didn't get the time zones quite right. I thought this was going to be good for people in the sort of New Zealand, Australia area, which is why I programmed this time. But I will instead ask next time and find a good time so we can get the most number of people here so that I can, do some examples and answer your questions in real time. Thank you very much for being a member of the site. Thank you for your purchase of the course. It helps immensely to support what I'm doing to help as many people as possible sing their best. And I couldn't do it without your support. So thank you one last time. Have a lovely, lovely evening, and I'll see you in the RVC. Bye.